Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, to the channel IT Simplified. I hope you're having good time with your family and friends. In today's session on Azure, I'm here to talk about Azure Sentinel with focus on collection component within this product from Microsoft. Now, Sentinel is one of the new product, and with this, Microsoft has got into the security playground. So Sentinel is basically a SIEM and SOAR solution. So if you have dealt with security aspects, you must have heard about these two terms, SIEM and SOAR. SIEM stand for Security Information and Event Management, and SOAR stand for Security Orchestration and Automatic Response. And because it's in the cloud, you get complete flexibility and scalability. So as the data that you're trying to analyze grow, you don't need to worry about. It will be taken care by Microsoft in this case. So that is what Sentinel is. And another important thing is from multi-tenancy aspect. So if you are a security provider, this is a multi-tenant model. So if you're providing security as a service to different organization, you can manage everything from one console, and that's the beauty, and that's what I think is great about Sentinel. Some of the other product may not give you that flexibility, but Sentinel has that option. Now, when we talk about Sentinel, it sits on top of Log Analytics Workspace. And that is what Sentinel uses to get the data. And that is where you're going to ingest the data. And once it is there, you can then work with that data to use it for your use from security perspective. But it is using Log Analytic Workspace. That's a common place where you're going to ingest all the data. And actually, I'm going to show you on the portal how you'll be creating this. But that is one of the building block that you need workspace in order to use Sentinel. But as I said that in the beginning of the video, that my focus will be on the collection part because you need to put the data in workspace and what are the different options. So before I get into the collection, Sentinel has four components to it. Obviously, one is collection, then detection, after the data is detected, you need to investigate, and then you want to respond to any security threat. So these are the four components on which not only Sentinel, but any security product is built on. But we're going to concentrate on the collection part today, because that's one of the basic requirements. You need to make sure that the data is ingested and what are the different options available. So let's look into that one by one. So let me just draw, let's say this is Azure. Now the first option is if you have your data in the cloud. Now because it's a because it's a Microsoft product, it's going to integrate with Microsoft native solutions such as Office 365. If you have the data in Office 365, if you have data in Azure subscription, Advanced Threat Protection, IAS, it can take the data from all these places. I'm going to put Sentinel in the middle. Not only Microsoft Cloud, if you have data in some of the other cloud solution, for example, AWS, if you have data in AWS, you can also put the data or push the data to log analytic workspace in the Sentinel. So both obviously Microsoft native solution as well as some of the other cloud vendor, including AWS and some of the other SaaS application, you can push the data towards the Sentinel. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind from the cost perspective over here is that, say, for example, if you're using Azure as a security center as one of the solution, and if you're pushing the data to Sentinel, there won't be any charge for pushing the logs into the Sentinel. Very similar to that if you're using Azure Information Protection, you're using advanced set protection, all these options, there won't be any charge to put the data into the workspace. And makes more sense. If you're a Microsoft Workshop, then I think it will be lucrative for you to use this solution because you're already using that solution. And if you want to provide security as a service, there won't be double charge for putting the data inside. But there's some services, for example, one of the exception that comes to my mind is Azure Active Directory. If you want to push the data from Azure Active Directory into Sentinel, though it's a Microsoft native solution, there will be a charge for ingestion of data or ingesting of data. So these things you need to keep in mind because at the end of the month, you should not be looking at the bill and getting surprised. So some of the solution, Microsoft native solution, there won't be any charge, some of them which I mentioned, but there will be charged for some of the other solution. But the important thing is, if you have the data in Microsoft Native Cloud, if you have in some of the other cloud vendors like AWS and even some of the other SaaS application, you will be able to push the data into Sentinel. Now that's one option. Now what is the other option? Now let's look at on-prem solutions or environment actually. So say for example, if you have on-prem Windows and Linux, you'll be able to push the data into Sentinel. You need to have an agent deployed on these machines. Now, when we deploy any infrastructure within the cloud, for example, in Azure, in this case, if you're deploying a virtual machine, by default, it deploys a monitoring agent, which collects all the operating system telemetry. That's how you get all the dashboards for, how your disk is behaving, what is the CPU consumption and all that. But when we talk about on-prem, there is no agent which is there. So you need to, in case you want to interact that with the workspace, you need to deploy that agent onto your on-prem machine, and that is how it's going to talk to the Sentinel workspace, and you can link that with the Sentinel workspace. Now, what happens in case your machine doesn't have a direct internet connectivity with outside world? Now, for that, what you can do is you can deploy a proxy collector, which will act as a central repository for collecting all the logs and everything. And then you can push the data from there into the Sentinel, right? And it will be all encrypted. So this is for your Windows and Linux machines, right? Even if if you want to send the logs from, say, DNS, DHCP, firewall, right? You can use this to push that. Now that's one option. Other option is that what about some of the other networking appliances? Or even if you want to send the data from the syslogs from Linux machines. So if I have Linux machine, if I have a networking components such as Cisco, Checkpoint, and I want to push the data to Sentinel, for that you will require a virtual machine, a Linux virtual machine, because generally you don't push the syslogs to the outside world, right? There is no reason, it's not meant for that. But in case you want to do that, you need to have a Linux VM in order to push the data, and we can ingest that data into the Sentinel. And again, You can have a proxy in case you want, in case it can't talk directly, right? So again, this option is also common in case you want to push the data and you want to analyze. You can utilize a virtual machine in order to push the syslogs and other information, right? That's there. What about some of the other appliances? And this list is keep on growing. So if you have, say, for example, F5 on-prem, if you have appliances from Barracuda, Symantec, there's a also API integration, and this list keeps on growing. As I said, that Sentinel is one of the new product, right? So they keep on adding more and more functionality, and its compatibility with some of the major networking components. So if you have data on F5, on Barracuda or Semantic appliance, you want to push that to Sentinel, there's a API integration with at least these companies. It might have changed. The list keeps on increasing. So what you can do is you can go into the portal of any of these company, any of these appliance, sorry, and then you will see you can link the log analytic workspace ID, and it can directly send the data to Sentinel. So that option is also there. Now, what happens in case you don't fall in any of those categories, right? And you want to have, I would say, customized connectors. Now, that option is also there. You can create your own custom connector. For this, you can either use PowerShell, you can use APIs, right? You can use command prompt. So all these options are there in case you want to create a custom connector, in case you don't fall in any of the category which I talked about. For example, if you want to push the logs from S3 bucket, you can use Azure Functions to do that, right? So this is very important. So I thought that, maybe I'll take time on this explaining. So all these options, so whether you are talking about the cloud native solution from Microsoft or some of the other cloud vendor like AWS and other SaaS application, if you have on-prem Windows and Linux, you want to send that logs, you can do that. If you want to send the system logs from Linux machine, from some of the other networking vendors like Cisco, Checkpoint, you can do that too. There's an API integration with F5, Barracuda, Symantec, and there are other vendors too which you can utilize, and you can also create your own custom connectors. So these are some of the options which are there when it comes to pushing the data into the log analytic workspace. So that is what the collection part is, and I thought that also. I hope that was clear. So let's look at how you get started with Sentinel, right? And it is pretty straightforward, nothing extraordinary. If I go and type in Azure Sentinel, and I just said that it sits over log analytic workspace, you have to create a log analytic workspace. And it's just a 3-step process. You just go and click on create new. You pick your subscription, under what resource group you want to use, pricing tier you want to tag it, and you just review and create. So nothing special, pretty straightforward. I have already created one with the name loss 10. So if I go under this, under configuration, the things which I explained you is the data connectors. And you can see that there are a lot of connectors which are built in, but if you want to utilize or fall under any of those scenarios which I talked about, you can do that too. But you can use these connectors. So in case you want to push system logs, you can use the common event format. If I go and click on open connector page, you will see that it is asking me to download a Linux machine. Now this machine can be anywhere. The chances are you want to keep it closer to your environment from where you want to collect the data. So in case I'm having on-prem, preferably I want to keep the data or put this machine closer to that environment, but you can download and you can link that with a workspace. Also, just want to quickly show you from where you can download that agent in case you want to collect the Windows logs. If I go into my log analytic workspace, if I go into the advanced settings, you see this is the agent which I was talking about. You have the agent for both Windows and Linux. And as I said, that in case you're deploying any infra from the marketplace within Microsoft, this agent is deployed automatically, but there is no such agent in case I'm trying to collect the data from on-prem. So I need to have those agents so that it can talk to my workspace and collect the data so that I can use it from the security perspective. So this was a quick overview of Azure Sentinel with focus on the collection. And if you fall in any of those categories, you can collect the data and this list keeps on growing. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.